Hi everybody, I hope everyone is safe and healthy out there. Let me introduce myself. I'm Ashna Felix. I'm a former student of Don Bosco Senior Secondary School and now I'm doing my post-graduation in statistics from Cochin University of Science and Technology. And today I'm very happy to lead this session for you along with my friend Emilia Merin. And I thank all the teachers for inviting us for the same. We are discussing about the topic energy. You're all knowing what is energy, right? Yes, it is the capacity to do work. You're all doing lots of work daily like walking, cycling, running, playing football and so on. And you require energy for doing all those work. And hence it is important to know more about energy. We are only discussing about some basic concepts of energy and two forms of energy, namely tidal energy and ocean thermal energy. And we are leaving behind a lot more for you to explore. Okay then, let's begin.
Do you know from where do we get energy? Sun is the major source of energy. The other sources are water, wind, plants, etc. Here you can see the different forms of energy. Electrical energy, thermal energy, light energy, green energy, wave energy, heat energy, hydroelectric energy, solar energy, wind energy, nuclear energy, tidal energy, biomass energy, kinetic energy, and geothermal energy are some forms of energy. The sources of energy can be classified into renewable and non-renewable. Renewable energy cannot be depleted. That means energy that is sustainable, something that can't run out or is endless, like the sun. Non-renewable energy comes from sources that will run out or will not be replenished for thousands or even millions of years. Here you can see that the renewable energy are solar energy, hydropower energy, biomass energy, geothermal energy and wind energy, and the non-renewable energy are fossil fuel oil, coal, nuclear energy and natural gas. Now let us discuss a renewable source of energy, which is tidal power. Do you all know what are tides? If some of you don't know, you can watch how tides are formed in the next video.
So what is a tide? It is basically rise and fall of the sea level. It occurs once or twice in a day. And the reason behind that is due to the attraction of the sun and the moon. Now I'll explain how tides work. There are many factors that are involved in creating a tide. However, three of them are important. They are the sun, the moon and the earth. All these three huge bodies have different gravitational pull, which creates a tide in the ocean. But in general, if you see the study of tides, it is a very complex subject. It's very confusing. Anyhow, as I said, the three major factors involved in creating tide are the moon, the earth and the sun. And the gravitational pull of all three bodies creates tide. As we know that the earth is quite larger than the moon. That's why the moon orbits around the earth. But then if you see, the earth is smaller than the sun. The sun is enormous. That's why the entire solar system revolves around the sun. That means smaller bodies orbit around the larger one. Because the larger body exerts a gravitational pull on the smaller one. I hope so far it's clear. Now imagine this is Earth. The moon is right above it. Both Earth and the moon will exert some gravitational pull. Now we know that everything on Earth is grounded. And it is because of the gravitational pull of the earth. For example, you and I are standing. If we jump, we will fall back to the same place. If you drop a light feather, it will fall due to the earth's gravitational pull. Now when it comes to ocean, water is fluid and fluids move more easily. So when water on earth in a particular region, if it is directly beneath the moon, then the water gets pulled by the gravitational force towards the moon. And that creates a bulge, meaning a tide on the surface of the ocean. And on the other side of the earth, there is another bulge in the ocean water. And this happens because this side of the water is further away from the moon and the centrifugal force that counterbalances gravity on Earth. So there are two tidal bulges that are created on opposite sides of the Earth. One is due to the moon's gravitational force and the other is due to the centrifugal force of the Earth. If you don't know what is centrifugal force, I'll just tell you quickly. Imagine gravity as a rope that pulls everything to the center of the Earth. And centrifugal force is the outward force that counterbalances the gravity. Anyhow, you just need to remember that there are two tidal bulges on opposite sides of the Earth. And both the side of the Earth where there is bulges, you will find high tide. And on the side that is right angle to the moon, you will have low tide. It is a bit confusing, right? But that's how it is. Now this all happens only when there is moon and the Earth. What about the sun? As I said, the sun is bigger than all the celestial bodies in a solar system. That means the sun will exert more gravitational pull, and it has influences on the tides as well. However, the sun's gravitational pull can do two things. Either it will increase the moon's gravitational pull on Earth, or it will diminish the moon's gravitational pull on Earth. When the Earth, the moon and the sun are in a straight line, the sun is behind the moon. Therefore, it enhances moon's gravitational pull, and that creates much higher tides. They are called spring tide. But when the sun and the moon is at right angle, the sun diminishes the gravitational pull of the moon on Earth, and that creates low tides. They are called neap tides. So this is how tides are formed.
Now you all might have understood what is a tide. Hence, tides are the rising and falling of Earth's ocean surface caused by the tidal forces of the moon and the sun acting on the oceans. Here you can see an image displaying high tide and low tide. You can examine the image carefully. Now we can see what is a high tide and a low tide. The high and low tides are caused by the gravitational forces between the Earth and the Moon. However, the source of the real effect takes some explaining to grasp. The incorrect way of thinking is that the moon attracts all the water to itself, therefore causing a high tide on the side of the earth close to the moon and a low tide on the side far from the moon. However, if this was the case, there would be a high tide once per day, but there are two high tides a day. The reason is the part of the earth both away from the moon and close to the moon both get high tides. Now, we need to explain why this is so. The earth and moon rotate around each other, each pulling the other towards itself. The moon attracts every piece of matter on earth. Since gravity is inversely proportional to the square of the distance, this force is greater on the side of the earth closer to the moon and lesser on the side of the earth farther from the moon. Since the earth is a quite rigid object, this difference in forces fails to deform the earth. However, it succeeds quite well in deforming the oceans, which are not as rigid. Since the waters on the moon side are attracted more strongly than average, they tend to bulge towards the moon, hence causing a high tide. The waters on the opposite side of the moon, since they are attracted less strongly than average, tends to lag behind the rigid earth and bulge away from the moon, which in this case is also away from the earth, again causing a high tide. Low tide occurs at about right angles to the moon, where the force on the water match the average pull of the moon on the earth closely. What is the tidal force? The tidal force is the vectorial difference between the gravitational force of the earth and the gravitational force of the moon. Tidal power, sometimes called tidal energy, is a form of hydropower that exploits the movement of water caused by Tidal currents are the rise and fall in sea levels due to the tides. Although not yet widely used, tidal power has potential for future electricity generation and is more predictable than wind energy and solar power. Now we shall see what are spring tides and neap tides. Spring tide is the tide with greatest difference between low and high tide. Then the sun and the moon will be in the same direction. Hence, gravity of sun and moon pull in the same direction. It occurs at new moon and full moon. Now, what is a neap tide? It is the tide with least difference between low and high tide. It happens when moon is at a right angle to the sun. It occurs at first and last quarter. Components of tidal power plants. The three components of tidal power plants are dam, sluiceways, and powerhouse. The function of a dam is to form a barrier between the sea and the basin or between one basin to the other basin in case of multiple basins. Sluiceways are provided in the dam so that water can enter into basin during high tides and to empty the basin during low tides. Sluiceways are controlled through gates. Powerhouse consists of turbine, electrical generators and other auxiliary components. Principle of tidal power station. Barrages make use of the potential energy from the difference in height between high and low tides. Hope you all know what is potential energy. It is the energy possessed by an object due to its position or shape. Tidal stream systems make use of the kinetic energy from the moving water currents to power turbines in a similar way to windmill use moving air. This method is gaining popularity because of the lower cost and lower ecological impact. Energy possessed by an object due to its motion is called kinetic energy. In a flood tide, water comes towards land from the sea. In an ebb tide, water goes towards sea from the land. Modes of operation of tidal power plant. Ebb generation. The reservoir is filled up during high tides. The stored water is made to flow out of the reservoir to ocean through turbines during low tides. Flood generation. The seawater is made to flow through the turbines into the reservoir or basin during high tides. Water is made to flow through turbines for power generation both during high tides from sea to basin, during low tides from basin to sea. Pumping and turbining. The reservoir is filled using two methods. First method is the rise of water during high tide or using pumps to pump seawater into reservoir. Now we shall see the advantages and disadvantages of tidal energy. First we shall look into the advantages. It is clean and inexhaustible energy. Silent as atmospheric gases emissions ring. Raw materials cost theoretically zero. Available regardless of weather and time of year. The disadvantages are, it depends on the tidal range, so it can't be installed anywhere. High costs per megawatt installed. Energy transfers usually expensive. Impacts on marine biodiversity. Global environmental impacts of tidal power are a tidal power scheme is long-term source of electricity. A proposal for the Severn barrage, if built, has been projected to save 18 million tons of coal per year of operation. This decreases the output of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. If fossil fuel resources is likely to decline during the 21st century as predicted by the Hubbard peak theory, tidal power is one of the alternative sources of energy that will need to be developed to satisfy the human demand for energy. Hope you all have got a glimpse about what is tidal energy. I'm concluding my session. My friend Emilia will be handling the rest of the session. Thank you.
Hi all. So I hope now you are nourished with some basic concepts of energy from Ashna about what it is and what are its different forms. So if you are to talk about energy, there is a lot of things to talk about that, and I don't think a day will be enough to discuss about energy and its forms. And out of the numerous forms of energy, you have come across one of them, which was tidal energy, and I would like to put some light on ocean thermal energy. But before we move on to that, I would like to introduce myself. I am Emilia Merin, and currently I'm pursuing my Masters in Mathematics from Sacred Arts College, Tevara. I was a former student of Don Bosco School, Vaduthala, and I had passed out in 2017. So today I'm so privileged and happy to be talking to you, and I'm grateful to the teachers and the management of the school for giving us such a great opportunity. So again, back to our ocean thermal energy.
In our daily life, we are dependent upon a lot of energy resources, but some of them are non-renewable resource. And I hope you're familiar with the term non-renewable. For example, fossil fuels, they are non-renewable resources. That is, they might get degraded very soon. And once they are exhausted, they will be completely gone. We can't have them back. In today's world, your automobile industries, they are very much dependent upon fossil fuels like petrol and diesel, which might degrade at least soon. So now we have enough to use for our time, but what about the future generations? So in that case, we need to have a sustainable energy source, which we can use for our own time as well as for the future generations to come. And now we are already familiar with the solar energy being used as a renewable one. The solar cells, they make use of the sun as a resource, right? And the solar cells, they are used in several ways as water heaters and to drive electricity and in a lot of other ways. In the same way, ocean thermal energy is also a sustainable form of energy, and the main energy source is the sun itself. That's why it's termed thermal. So why this called as ocean thermal energy? We know that 75% of Earth's surface is covered by water. So if we leave apart that small fraction consisting of the freshwater bodies as well as the underground water, we can say that oceans cover up more than 70% of Earth's surface. And the ocean surface is so large that it can trap maximum amount of solar energy. So we can say that the oceans are the world's largest solar energy collector and energy storage system. There are also statistical records as to how much energy it can store, or how much solar energy these oceans can store. So due to the heat of the sun, the ocean surface will be very hot and the water beneath them will be cool. So there is a temperature difference between the surface and the water beneath that. This temperature difference helps us to convert solar energy stored in the ocean into electrical energy. It's given in blue here, the conversion of solar energy stored in the ocean into electrical energy by making use of temperature difference between the warm surface water and the cold deeper water. This is what we call ocean thermal energy conversion. Okay, and this system which makes this possible is the ocean thermal energy converter, which we call as OTEC. So in short, we can say this OTEC is an energy technology that converts solar radiation into electrical power. Okay, so this OTEC system, it can produce enough amount of power if the energy difference is about 20 degrees Celsius. Okay, now other than this power generation, there are also many other benefits for OTEC. like to say this cold deep water used in the OTEC process is rich in nutrients, so that can be used to culture both marine organisms as well as plants. This image shows the temperature difference between the surface and depths of 1000 meters. So these regions marked in white, they are of depth less than 1000 meter, and there the temperature difference is almost about 20 to 22 degrees Celsius. And we have already told earlier that if the temperature difference is about 20 degrees Celsius, then these OTECs can supply maximum power. So we can say that it will be more efficient in these regions marked in white. Now let us discuss the types of OTEC plants. There are primarily of three types: land-based plants or onshore plants, as you can see in this first picture. Then there are shelf-based plants as well as floating type plants. Land-based plants or onshore plants, as the name suggests, they are located onshore, on an onshore site. Okay, so it will drive water from the ocean with the help of pumps and pipes. Now there are a lot of advantages for these onshore plants. The main advantage is that they are on an onshore site, so they can be they are kind of sheltered, or we say they are prevented from the storms that might happen in the ocean or sea. Also, they can be located close to the industries that require desalinated water. So those are some of the advantages of onshore plants. Now coming to the shelf-based plants, they are mounted on the continental shelf. That is, they will be inside seawater but in the shallow regions of the sea. So they won't be on the shore but somewhat near to the shore. Now the advantage of this shelf-based plants is that they are very close to the hot water, that is the ocean surface, as well as the cold water, because they are not that deep. So they are very close to the hot water as well as the cold water, and so they can be effective in power generation. And the third one is the floating type plants. So as the name suggests, it will be in the ocean only, and they are completely offshore. The main advantage is that it can be easily installed, but there are also disadvantages because they are much prone to damages due to storms. Also, these power lines, they will be lying in a greater depth since they are inside the ocean, and therefore that is another disadvantage. So that's about the types of OTEC plants. Now let us look into some history of OTEC. So it was Jacques Arsene in 1881 who proposed tapping thermal energy from ocean, and it was Georges Cloud who put that into practice in the year 1930, and he built an OTEC plant which generated about 22 kilowatts of power. Now let us move on to the applications of OTEC. So as told earlier, the main purpose is the power generation. We convert solar power to electricity. How does this happen? The warm seawater, it will vaporize a working fluid, to say ammonia, and the steam of ammonia will be used to run a turbine to generate power. And there are different methods used for power generation. Then another application is in refrigeration and air conditioning of offshore and onshore structures. The cold seawater delivered to an OTEC plant that can be used in chilled water coils to provide air conditioning for both offshore as well as onshore projects and structure. Then it is used to desalinate water. You know that one of the greatest disadvantages of using seawater is that it is saline. But if there is a method to desalinate it, then it will be of great help. So OTEC system provides that by making use of surface condenser. So the spent steam, it will be condensed by indirect contact with the cold seawater. The cold seawater is not given a direct contact with the steam, but an indirect contact. So then the condensate, that is the water left after condensation, that will be free of impurities and it can be collected and supplied to the local communities, especially into the places where natural freshwater supply are limited. Then another application is in artificial fishing. We've told earlier that the cold water made available by this OTEC system, that contains a lot of nutrients. So you can grow some fish in this cold water. There are some fish which are not indigenous to tropical waters. That is, they don't require tropical waters always. So they can be grown in this cold water made available by OTEC system. They will include fish like salmon, lobster, oysters, etc. And since they are grown in a water rich in nutrients, this fish also will be highly nutritive. So that is artificial fishing. That is, this fish can be raised in pools created by OTEC pumped water. And another application is mineral exploration. It is said that ocean water contains about 57 elements dissolved in solution. So OTEC could provide to mine ocean water. Now, in the past days, before the development of this OTEC system, it was very difficult and expensive to pump large amount of ocean water in order to collect the minerals. So with the help of OTEC system, that is also made easily possible. So that's about mineral exploration. Now let us move on to some benefits of OTEC. The first thing is that it is a non-polluting form of energy, and since this is a renewable resource, it can help reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, and it can help produce desalinated water from seawater. It can help improve quality and variety of seafood in the market. So why did we say improve quality? Because we said that the seafood grown in this water made available by OTEC system, they are very nutritive. So that improves the quality and variety of seafood in market. And it is also a great source of energy and power for offshore and nearshore operation. This again tells the same thing. It can also produce ammonia, hydrogen, aluminum, chlorine, and other chemicals. Now, so we were speaking about a lot of advantages of OTEC, but it is also left with some of the limitations. The main thing is the site, the place, the location of OTEC. They are very limited, and the cost of setting up project is also quite high. The maintenance cost is also very high, especially when it comes to the floating type. We already said earlier that they are prone to the storms. So the maintenance cost is very high in order to sustain that. So this large investment makes the projects uneconomical. So now we come into the conclusion that these OTEC systems are very much helpful provided for their limitations. So if we put in more research and development in this field, then we can find a solution to those limitations, and thus we can satisfactorily fulfill the needs of all the people. And thereby we can reduce our dependence on fossil fuels also, or any other non-renewable resources. Once if you have this sustainable source of energy, then you can fulfill the needs of ourselves as well as for the future generations to come. So what I covered now was just a small concept about ocean thermal energy converter, and I hope that this session was at least of new information to you. There are yet more and more to talk about energy, as energy is the basic source of life. So let your curiosity about energy and making use of this energy carry you to new innovations. So wish you all the best, and thank you for patient listening. Thank you.